everybody. Welcome to another webinar here at Route Consultant. For those of you who are here for the first time or haven't been in a while, my name is Josh Gregory. I'm the Vice President of Education here at Route Consultant. All that really should mean to you is that my goal here is to help educate you on opportunities in this space and things that you really need to know that are happening in the industry, whether you're looking to get into it for the first time or you're already a contractor. Now, this is a place where we want to always have it on a weekly basis, where we're going to provide some content, give you some updates on things that are happening in the industry. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. So at any point today, as I'm talking, feel free to type questions in and we'll answer them at the end. My only ask is that if you do have those questions, we have a little Q&A button at the bottom of the window, and that's really the best place to put them if you want me to see them. You can put it in the chat, you can raise your hand, but there's a decent chance I'll miss it. So if you really want your questions answered, type it in the Q&A. And like I said, it can be at any time as we're talking or when we actually open it up for Q&A at the end. Now, before I go too much farther, do have a quick disclaimer to read, as I do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So all that to say, we do want to make sure that this is a place where you can always continue to come, learn, and have your questions answered. As this industry changes every day, every week, we want to have a place where we can all come together and learn. Now, for today, if you were here last week, we talked a little bit about fleet strategy and maintenance on the P&D side. This week, we're focusing really on Linehaul. And we also crucially want to highlight something that's happening next week from an inspection standpoint. So we'll go over that in just a second. But to help with this conversation, we've brought Alex Froome back to help with the discussion. And if you haven't met Alex, if you haven't seen him on here, he's a Linehaul contractor with runs in multiple places across the country. And he's going to have a lot of kind of experience and stories on how he's handled this in his own business. So Alex, I see you there. If you want to say hi to everybody and we can get started.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. And thanks to, it's always a pleasure being here, Josh.
Yeah, perfect. So before we jump into fleet strategy and all that, I know that there are some things happening next week on the road check side. So can you explain to everybody what that is?
Yeah, so every year there's something called the CVSA International Road Check. It always happens usually the second or third week of May, and CVSA stands for Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance. And what they do is they usually highlight some component of either the pre-trip or post-trip inspection, something that's mechanical on the tractor that they are encouraging all truck drivers and truckers on the road to pay attention to. And DOT officers are going to be encouraged to have a higher propensity to inspect vehicles going through their weigh stations, and they're going to be specifically inspecting this. In the past, it's usually been a function of hours of service, or ELD or Omnitrax, or well, not Omnitrax, but ELD and hours of service focus, or maybe your driver fitness. So do you have your medical license or medical exam certificate? Do you have your driver's license on you? Those items, coupled with some component of vehicle safety, brakes, tires, airlines, etc. This year, they're making a highlight on controlled substances. So they're going to be spending a lot of time focused on and asking your drivers, whether or not they've been drinking, have they been doing drugs, do they have any alcohol in their cab, do they have any illegal substances in their cab? Depending on the questions that they get asked and how the drivers respond, the DOT officers can use this opportunity to actually go further and inspect the cab or have your drivers do a sobriety test if they perceive something going on when they ask these questions. The second component of this is called the tractor protection and anti-bleed back system. Josh, I believe you have something that we can share. So the tractor protection and anti-bleed back system is a component of your vehicle safety. It's actually it's a component that's generally not checked very frequently by drivers during the pre-trip and post-trip inspections. Like if you talk to a driver, they'll be like, oh, got to check my lights, got to check my brakes, got to check my tires, and listen for any air leaks. And maybe you'll get them to check their oil. Maybe you'll get them to check their windshield wiper fluid. Guarantee you more than 90% of them are not checking their tractor protection and anti-bleed back systems. So this is something you should be highlighting on it. There are a number of different sites. Ryder, Penske, REL, the three big leasers in this area, have put out pamphlets about how to check this. You can go to the CVSA website. They actually have it. The terminal managers and the senior line haul managers have been providing this information to truck drivers, to BCs, and to AOs to try to highlight this, because the goal is to go through this and actually get clean inspections. And if you manage to get clean inspections, that's a positive for your safety score. So highlight it, encourage your drivers to make sure that they're doing their pre-trip inspections and they're prepared to get inspected when they go through weigh stations or when they're going through custom points or state lines. So this will give you an opportunity, so they'll be prepared when this happens.
Yeah, and if you need this document or you need, anything like that, we've got a bunch. It's the same stuff that's being passed around, but we're happy to provide it to you, share it with you. If you have those questions, you can reach out to us. Now, just for everybody, if maybe they're not familiar with it, Alex, what happens if you don't pass one of these?
Okay, so if you don't happen to pass a CVSA road check, depending on what it can be, obviously you're going to get a CSA violation. And if it's severe enough, if you have a maintenance issue, they are going to put your tractor out of service until it gets fixed. So if you have a low tire, you'll have to reinflate the tire. If you actually have your brakes out of alignment, or your slack adjusters out of alignment, or you have an airline that actually has wear and rubbing on it, then you'll have a mechanic. And a lot of the bigger weigh stations usually have a mechanic on site during this week, and they're going through and then they're just repairing it. You will have to turn in a DVIR, a driver vehicle inspection report, showing that they've identified what the fault was and that it was repaired and signed off by the mechanic. And you'll have to turn that into your terminal manager or into dispatch along with the CSA violation. If it's a mechanical failure, you're going to get hit with a 45-point deduction on your safety score. If it's an hours of service, it's going to be 35 points. So usually those are driver fitness issues, like they're not logging in, they're driving under a load in personal conveyance. They're breaching their hours of service. They didn't take a 30-minute rest break. They don't have their driver's license or medical certificate. Or a big one a couple of years ago was making sure that your medical certificate was tied to the driver's license through the DMV electronically.
Now, I know one of the focuses this year is alcohol, and let's say, maybe the driver hit it in a place where it wouldn't have showed up on the better camera, but they kind of fail this inspection and it's found. I'd imagine it's a more serious situation if it's something like.
Yes, it is a significantly more serious situation. You'd have to go through Schedule E in the event on what the exact category is and how it's determined. But there is going to be a significant punishment in that situation. I mean, obviously, your driver is going to be put out of service if he's driving while under the influence. Your contract may be at risk. More than likely, you're going to be given an opportunity cure. But that driver is going to get banned. I believe it's a lifetime ban if he is caught doing drugs or alcohol. Not only that, but then he also has that actually put into his drug and alcohol clearinghouse. And not only will he not be able to go to work for FedEx again, but he has to go through a substance abuse program, a SAP program, for a year before he's going to be eligible to drive for another carrier.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty substantial violation.
And even if it wasn't a lifetime ban, that is not an employee you want to keep. Yeah.
And it's something to be really mindful of because, a lot of truck drivers want, a lot of state laws are different than what the federal law is. Okay. So I live here in Colorado, guess what? Medical marijuana is completely legal. However, your drivers are not subject to, Colorado laws. They're subject to the federal laws. And at this time, medical marijuana is still illegal. So that means no CBD and no THC. Regardless of the fact if they were under, they could be under the influence, but it's even a greater threat to them on the federal level, because not only are they driving under the influence, but they're also driving under a class 1 narcotic now.
Mhm.
So they're probably going to face jail time if they get busted with with marijuana, even though it's legal in certain states.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest ones right now. Alcohol, everybody understands they shouldn't have it, but it's not illegal to have, as opposed to marijuana, that there's some ambiguity there, state specific differences. And so explaining that to drivers is really important. If you haven't made that really clear and interpreted it as an owner, that is not acceptable regardless of the state you're in for any of your drivers. And
Yeah.
FedEx and DOT inspections they will catch you on that.
Yeah, and one of the things that you really want to do when you're dealing with your drivers is whenever they go out for a medical reason, if they go see a doctor and they get prescribed medication, you actually want to get them to provide you with a doctor's note, clearing them to return to work. Okay. So this way, like if your doctor is prescribed him with some medication and you don't know what that medication is, I'm not a doctor, neither is Josh. And definitely your driver's not a doctor. So we don't know what the substance is and how it's going to impact him. So, like, if he had a tooth pulled, he's probably going to be given, at a minimum, Motrin, but more than likely, he's going to be given a stronger narcotic to deal with the pain. In that situation, he's not legally allowed to drive, and the doctor's note is going to clarify that for you. So, always request a doctor's note when your driver says, "Hey, I need to go see the doctor. I'm going in for this. I don't feel well. I have chest colds," because you don't know what's being prescribed to them. And at the end of the day, this is your business that's being put at risk. And you want to make sure that you're doing what's right for your business and also for that driver, because that driver's going to be like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm just taking like this, Demerol stuff. I'm good to go. Don't worry about me." No, in this situation, you want to read that doctor's note and say, "Okay, it says you're not medically cleared to drive until Thursday.
Yeah.
So we're going to hold you back."
Yeah, it's a lot better to scramble and find a driver or even have to decline worst case scenario as opposed to putting your contract at risk and that driver's and future career at risk just
Yeah.
because you didn't kind of pay attention to that type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's a really important thing on the inspection side that we just wanted to highlight because it is, it's next week. And so if you weren't aware of it or if you aren't prepared for it, just make sure that that's not a hiccup you run into next week in operations where suddenly you have a truck that's out of commission for a day because of something small that you could have handled.
Yeah.
But it all ties into the same conversation. So, it's about maintenance and fleet strategy. And this is a component of it. It's just a part that's what they're highlighting this year. So I think just as we're thinking about this, Alex, kind of talk us through on what's your fleet strategy, what's worked for you, and kind of how do you approach this topic?
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent. I'm a math guy. I'm a math geek. I love using Excel spreadsheets. I'm not a truck driver by trade. I served in the Army and then I went to go work on Wall Street and then, kind of realized that I really enjoyed doing logistics when I was in the Army and got back into it. So for me, I look at everything from a math perspective. And so when I look at what it makes sense, like I will compare what is the cost to own a vehicle if I'm buying it used? What is the cost to own a vehicle if I'm buying it new? And what is the cost to own a vehicle if I'm leasing? Okay. And so each of those different components have multiple levers that you can pull. And then you need to do this analysis. So like if I'm buying a used tractor, right? Say I buy a tractor with 300,000 miles and it's costing me $70,000 and I'm going to pay it for cash. Okay. Let's just keep it really simple. My assumption is that I'm going to run it probably, maybe 130,000 miles a year. So I'm going to give it a 4-year time horizon that I'm going to be able to operate this vehicle. And I'm going to take that $70,000 and I'm going to divide it by 4. Okay. So that's $17,500, right? So that's my cost to own that vehicle. Okay. To own it, not to operate it, to own it. So I'm assuming that's roughly given a run. Say I'm running 2,800 miles a week. I'm putting that tractor there. That's 12 cents per mile. So, $17,500 per year divided by 2,800 miles times 52 is going to cost me 12 cents per mile to own that vehicle. Okay. And then on top of that, then I'm assuming maintenance. It's a used vehicle. Say I'm smart enough to buy a 3-year 300,000 aftermarket warranty from the dealer. I'm a big fan of buying aftermarket warranties from the dealer, not from these third party warranty companies. And we can talk about that later. I've just had bad experiences, and
Yeah.
but I've had great experiences if like you buy the Volvo Assurance or the Detroit Assurance or the Kenworth, whatever they call it, that certified pre-owned warranty. It's good as gold. It's phenomenal. So buy that thing. So then I'm assuming that I'm probably the vehicle is going to cost me at least that first year 10 cents per mile to operate. Okay. That's going to be the maintenance cost of that vehicle. So all in, I'm in for 22 cents per mile. And when I make $2 per mile, then roughly I'm spending 12% of my take home on a VMR basis on owning that vehicle. Now, if I'm financing, it's a different story. Okay. So let's say I'm buying a brand new, say if we go back to that version right there, you need to talk to AP Finance. They're probably, I don't know if there's anybody else that finances as many used vehicles as AP Finance um, in the in the FedEx contractor space. They're great at it. You're looking at interest rates somewhere between probably 8.5% and 11%. And that number is going to change. So you're going to have to figure out, okay, what is my financing rate? And then versus what I'm putting down, and then add those numbers together to figure out what is going to be your cost to own that vehicle. Now, say you buy a brand new vehicle. Why spend $145,000 on a brand new vehicle, you're going to ask me? Well, one, my cost to operate that vehicle is only 3 cents per mile. Okay. Two, I can amortize that vehicle over a longer period. Like I plan out that I'm going to own my day cabs for 7 years. Okay. I'm going to get very close to doing 1,000,000 miles in those vehicles. Somewhere between 850 and 1,000,000 miles is when I typically get rid of them. Sometimes they run even longer. I mean, the transmission on these tractors these days are pretty much indestructible. So you don't have to worry about that. Really, the component that you're going to have to struggle with is as the vehicle goes through wear and tear, the gas mileage on it, I can't think of the word, just gets worse. And then you're gonna have to worry about the DEF system, which is the part of the engine that burns off the diesel so it doesn't contaminate the environment as much as it does. It still contaminates a little bit, but it's not as that bad. So if you buy a brand new vehicle, though, like I can finance it at 8%. I can finance pretty much the entire amount. You can do it through captive finance companies through the OEMs. So like Detroit has Daimler Finance, Volvo has Volvo Finance, Kenworth and PACCAR use PACCAR Finance. I don't know I assume Mack, it uses Volvo. Anyways, you're getting somewhere between 8 and 9% financing there. You can also finance through Bank of America, through Wells Fargo, Bank of Montreal, and a couple other small banks have large rolling stock is what they call it, rolling stock businesses where they finance tractors. But so if you're financing a tractor, depending on how much you're putting down, but let's say you put nothing down, you're going to take the 145,000 and you're just going to put it on your back and say, I'm going to carry this note for the next 5 years. That's a good term. Your cost to own the vehicle is roughly about 24 cents per mile. Okay. So that's 12% of your VMR. And if you're assuming 3 cents per mile maintenance, because it's under warranty for the next 5 years, and as long as you take care of that vehicle, the only thing you're going to be doing on it realistically is you're going to do your preventative maintenance. So you're going to change your oil every 50,000 miles. That's cost you about $500, $500 to $600. You're going to change out those tires. Your steer tires every 75,000 miles. That's $1,000 there. Your drives around 150,000 miles, and your drives are more expensive. You got to replace 8 tires there, so that's going to cost you about $4,000. But realistically, you're not going to have a whole lot more. I mean, you're going to do your overhead adjustment at 100,000 miles. You're going to change out your belts at 200,000, but all those kind of things are preventative maintenance and worthwhile. And so your cost to own that, to operate that vehicle is going to be about 3 cents per mile. Okay. So that's a very attractive option. And then you have the leasing companies. Why do you want to go leasing? Leasing is generally the most expensive option. Okay. But there are advantages to do leasing. Why are leasing the most expensive? Because they have to make money too. So they're going to buy that vehicle. Okay. They're going to operate their company, and they're going to be financing it. You know, Ryder, Penske, REL don't buy these tractors outright. They finance them just like everybody else does. And so they're going to pass along that financing rate to you, along with some probably haircut. And so it's going to be more expensive, but there's advantages to it. You know, you don't have to worry about maintenance. They'll take care of the maintenance for you. If it's Ryder, you go to the Ryder shop and they'll do the maintenance for you. If it's Penske, you go to the Penske shop and they'll do the maintenance for you. Now, there's a cost to doing that. You know, generally it's 4 or 5 cents per mile that they charge you on your contract to cover their maintenance costs. REL doesn't do it that same way. They actually have it as an embedded cost into their into their weekly nut that you pay. But either way, you're looking at it's more expensive, but there are convenience to it. If you break down in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, well, guess what? That leasing company is going to provide you with a tractor, and they're going to take care of getting that vehicle repaired. So leasing, you're looking at roughly around 30 cents to maybe, 32 cents a mile. And so in that situation, then you're looking at, something that's going to cost you 15% of your revenue. Okay. So those are the 3 different options. Now, what do you ask me what I do? I have a mix. I have used tractors that I've bought. I've bought brand new tractors, and I have some leases. Right now, I have 7 leases on. I have some with REL, which I've been very happy with. I have some on with Ryder, and I've been very happy with them. If you're really curious, we can go into the nuts and bolts about the differences between a Ryder and REL. Reach out to Josh. We can have a conversation. I can introduce you to Ryder. I can introduce you to REL. I don't have any experience with Penske. Penske is not as common for FedEx contractors because it's a little bit harder for FedEx contractors to qualify as for their leasing program, though I do know some contractors that lease through them. Finance, the bulk of my tractors I finance. So my shorter runs, and what I typically do is I assign tractors to a run. I just don't buy a tractor and think, because some of my runs are really, really long, and some of my runs are really, really short. So it doesn't make economic sense for me to buy a brand new tractor and put it on a 400 mile per day run. It's just I'm just not going to be able to make money there. I'm going to buy a used tractor, or I'm going to take that tractor that's been running for me that was brand new 5 years ago. I'm going to say, you know what? You've been crushing it for the last 5 years, running this this 3,000 mile per week run. We're going to give you some time off, and we're going to move you into retirement, or into like the middle stages of life. Kind of like thinking like you're kind of like cars, right? All your tractors have personalities. I kind of like to say the same thing. So like, hey, 168,488, it's time for you to take a break. We're going to put you on the Toledo run. Toledo only does 400 miles a day, so it's nice and easy. And we're going to, take this brand new, hot rod, like, Steve McQueen or whatever the Lightning McQueen is.
Yeah.
Put them on we're going to put on that moneymaker run that I have that goes 620 miles per day, and that's, so that's what you kind of do with your business. But so I would say I'm predominantly own my vehicles, or I finance them. I generally actually don't ever borrow the full amount. I'll put money down. I usually like to try to put down somewhere between $20,000 to $50,000. So I'm only borrowing on each tractor roughly around $100,000 per tractor. It gets my note down. It gets my interest payment down. It's just what I do. It's just how I manage my capital, because otherwise I build up a lot of cash in the company, and then it's in there, like I'm looking at it and being like, what do I want to do with this? And I just find that if I keep reinvesting my business and I keep growing, then I'm growing my bottom line. I'm growing the equity of my business. So that's how I operate. Now, maintenance. Okay, so this is the other really important component of your business. Okay, so if you own, or especially if you own a lot of used tractors, and if you're doing a lot of spots, you don't need to have these brand new tractors. If you're doing a lot of spots, you just need a tractor that has a really strong transmission and that is DEF compliant, because all our tractors have to have DEF compliance. But like if it's only doing 100 miles per day, you don't, it's a totally different business model there. So you can have a 2014 tractor that has less than 100,000 miles in that kind of situation. I mean, think about it. You're probably doing less of a commute in your daily life. You're doing more of a commute in your daily life than your tractor is.
Yeah.
So in that situation, you want to have a really strong mechanic because you're going to have different challenges of what this breaks down compared to, like, say, what I'm having. Like, you might have more issues with your Jake brakes. You might have more issues with your transmission, with your clutches. So you're going to be repairing those. And so you want to have a good mechanic either on hand in your company, who is, somebody on staff who's doing that kind of maintenance for you, or you want to have like a really good relationship with a mechanic around the area. So like I try to build really strong relationships with either dealers, and try to negotiate a certain rate with my dealers. So I'm paying a fixed labor rate. And one of the easiest ways to negotiate that is like say, hey, I'm going to guarantee you 50 oil changes a year. And they're like, what? You're going to guarantee me 50 oil changes? I'll do that in a heartbeat. That's a real money maker for them. They're like, oh, I can, you're going to come in and you're going to give me 50 oil changes. And you turn around back and be like, hey, I want $130 per hour labor charge. And they're gonna go back and forth and they're gonna do, but if you guarantee them a certain amount of preventative maintenance, it makes that shop look really good with, headquarters, with the OEM, because they're collecting all this data from your tractors going through. And so this is data that they can then use to analyze and figure out how do we make our tractors better in the future. So it makes that dealership look really good. So this is a way for you to do them and scratch their back, and you can get in return like a lower rate. And then they also know that I'm buying a lot of tractors from them. And so like I'm doing all my warranty work. And guess what? The warranty work, they're charging full freight when they go back to the OEM. They might be charging me, X, they're charging that OEM, Daimler, Detroit, Volvo, they're charging Y. So that's a good thing. So there's a lot of advantages there. Otherwise, if you're doing a lot of older trucks, you're going to want to have a good mechanic who can, break down tires, work on transmissions, look at water pumps, look at, you're probably going to be, if you're doing a lot of stops and starts, you're going to want somebody that, is pretty good with the radiators and with the the fifth wheel, stuff like that. So you're going to want to have somebody that you can rely on. Where does it make sense to get your own shop? I have 34 tractors and I don't have my own shop. I'm probably big enough now where I could do enough business to have my own shop, but then I need to have my own property. I need to set up a separate company for my mechanic. I need to find a mechanic that I trust to carry a couple $100,000 worth of inventory on hand. It becomes a lot more things. You have a different workers' comp, a different insurance. And, if he's not doing enough business, then you're going to want to say, hey, I'm going to open up my maintenance shop to like, Joe contractor and Freddie contractor. Well, you don't want to do that because now you have to have liability insurance to indemnify yourself and your mechanic in the event that he does some work and that tractor has a catastrophic failure. Yeah. So it just opens up. I would say, there are a couple big contractors who are really, really successful with it. Typically, they come from that side of the business and they start out at 20 to 30 tractors. And then, now they're running like 40 to 50 tractors and it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. There are some that it works really well with. It just kind of depends on your situation and what your priority is. But I think those are the right considerations and kind of the right thought framework for people to have. One question for you too, you said you got 7 leases. So for the ones that were leases, what was the reason you chose to go with lease versus own for those?
Well, I did the rider leases because I wanted to see what a rider lease was.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how this was before REL came out, or started doing business. And I was like, you know what? A lot of contractors swear by their the rider leases. You know what? I could do 3 tractors and, it's been a fine experience. I just prefer owning my vehicles. The REL leases was because I was in a bind and I needed tractors, and REL has a tractor available. So like when I can't go to my dealer and say, hey, I need a tractor today, or tomorrow, they'll be usually like, oh, I can get you a tractor in 6 months, if you give me some lead time. Now it's actually a little bit better. There's tractors on the ground.
Yeah.
It's a different story, but the last 2 years, if I had a situation, I had a tractor have a catastrophic failure. It blew a rod, and I had to move my spare tractor to run on one of my teams, and my teams, just I don't like having older tractors on my team runs, and so I needed a tractor for my team runs, and so I generally try to replace my team tractors every 2 to 3 years, right around 450,000 miles. So I needed a tractor I blew the rod in September, Freightliner, I'm a big Freightliner guy, said, hey, we can get you tractors in December. And I was like, yeah, I don't, want to take risk of, having my team on a 5,500-mile run that's going to go to 6,000 miles come peak on my spare tractor. My spare tractor's to use for, 1 or 2 days, and then, we bring it back. So I called up REL, and they're like, oh yeah, we got a tractor, sitting here in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And that was great. Within a week I had a tractor, brand new tractor for my team, and they were on the road and I had no problems. And then I just acquired 4 runs from another contractor. I bought 4 runs, and I didn't want to buy his equipment. So in that situation, I took on some rider leases. So not some rider leases, some REL leases, because it was just very convenient. I didn't need, you typically, right now is actually not a bad time, but in the past, you'll sit down with your dealer and be like, okay, what are your projections for 2025? And I'll be having this conversation actually probably in August, through October with him. Like, how many tractors are you going to need to buy in 2025? Then I'll probably be like, I'm going to buy 3 day cabs, and we're projecting in June or May that I'm going to take delivery of these tractors. Well, if I have something come up in a short time, it doesn't do me a whole lot of good. Like, if that dealer happens to have tractors on the ground, great, and I can go do that. If I can find financing for it. If not, then just going the REL program is great as well. So it gives me additional flexibility.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that's what's important, is understanding everything. There are different scenarios where it may make the most sense to use a lease. It may make the most sense to buy a new, and sometimes it may make the most sense to get a used tractor. The really important things are to understand the financials of both your business and the cost of ownership, exactly like you laid out. And as long as you've got the right inputs and kind of understand those two things, you can make the right decision. And that right decision may look different for different people on different markets and different points of time. Last year, that decision might look different than it does this year. But a lot of it is understanding the calculations, the tools that you need to make those decisions. And if you have a business either that you own or that you're looking at and you're trying to work through this, we're always happy to help and kind of evaluate your current fleet or the fleet that you're inheriting and help you make those decisions, because it's not always easy. And so there are calculations and context that you need, and we're happy to help. We've done it for years in all kinds of businesses.
And the other thing to remember is that you want to have that flexibility, because you want to have different tractors and different types of financing or payment options on those tractors for different runs. So, like, I would never have a brand new leased day cab on an unassigned run. I'm putting actually one of my oldest tractors on that run, because there's no guarantee that it's going to run frequently now. But that's just my experience. Now, if you're operating out of, say, KCMO and Lenexa, I've been hearing that their unassigned runs rotation spins daily. So it's a great place to be, so that's a great location. So, like, it all depends. Like, if you're getting 1,200 miles a week on your unassigned run, then you want to put it on a used tractor. But if you're, in a location that's getting 2,500 to 3,000 miles a week on that unassigned run rotation, then yeah, you can do it. But just understand that, what makes this great and why you want to use financing or leasing on your tractors and in your business is because you have dedicated runs that have dedicated miles. And so you have some predictability there. If you don't have that predictability, then you really need to be careful of what you're putting yourself on, because putting yourself on a 5-year note or a 2-year or 4-year lease can get you really into hot water very quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah, and that's a great call out. So we've talked about a lot here. I'm gonna in just a second, I'm gonna run through the listings and upcoming events. If anyone does have any questions on this, feel free to ask them here. But what I do find a lot of times on this topic in particular is that the questions are more of an offline thing. So if you have a very custom specific question about your fleet, like I said, feel free to reach out to us. You can send us your info or reach out at info@routeconsultant.com. Now, new inventory for this week. We got 3 new listings. The first one is P&D listing out of Virginia. It's 11 P&D routes at $700,000. It's about a 19% margin, a couple managers, 11 trucks, and mainly newer trucks as well. So if you're kind of looking into Virginia, it's, you got some spares, you got some extra manager capacity. And so that's a good one for all of that. Another one actually out of Virginia as well. It's another 11 routes. These at $550,000. About a 15% margin, 2 managers, and again, as newer trucks. So you've got some options here in Virginia for some additional, some run or some P&D businesses with extra managers and trucks, if that's kind of what you're looking for. And then the last one is for Linehaul runs out of the Utah area. And this has a manager, 6 trucks, and newer trucks as well. So a different composition of different types of runs. And this one's at 1.35 million. So if you're looking for that area of the world, Alex is familiar with that area of the world as well. And so if you're looking to get into that one, reach out. We can kind of walk you through all of that.
I mean, I think, one of the nice things and one of the attractive things about line haul on the West Coast is generally you get longer stem miles. So like, I operate out of Memphis, and I actually have some decent runs, but like my average run is about 470 miles per day for my solos.
Yep.
Okay. But if you go out, the further out west you go, the further apart the terminals are and the stations are. And so you get longer legs on your runs. And so that's something that's really attractive. Like, I know contractors who, like just doing like California to Phoenix, that's 300 and, plus miles. And so that's a long run. So these are all things that you got to think about. So like the longer, the further apart the hubs are, the longer your stud miles are. And as you know, or as you will learn from doing the analysis, the more your wheels are turning, the more revenue you generate, because you have a lot of fixed costs. And the big variable is how many miles are you running or how many spots are you doing? So that's how you generate, increased margins, because at the end of the day, we all have these same fixed costs.
Yeah. And so the more you can up your mileage, and it's a great call out, it's easy to forget how much space there is in the western half of the US. And so, obviously there's there's maybe some more population in certain pockets, like in certain parts of California, but a lot of these states, state to state, is a huge distance. There's not a lot between it. So that's a good call out when you're kind of thinking through the line haul side of things.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that most people who don't live in Texas don't realize how big Texas is.
Texas is
Their cities are apart from each other.
Yeah, 100%. Perfect. So only the one event that I wanted to highlight that's coming up, if you are still trying to decide if FedEx is the right space for you and you're trying to make that first decision, we do host these new investor summits that are designed to teach you as much as we can about the business and really help you make the decision, one, if it's the right space for you, and 2, if P&D or line haul is the right direction for you. And so there's 2 components to that. When you sign up for one of those summits, you get both a digital course load that you can watch immediately, and we have in-person workshops that come with it as well. And our next one's May 24th at our offices in Nashville. So if that's something that's of interest to you, those are, that is coming up very quickly, and there's not a ton of spots left. So if you want to join that one, I'd advise go ahead and jumping on it and trying to get registered for that, book your flights and make it out to Nashville. Other than that, I'm not seeing any questions that have come in. So if anyone has anything else that they want to reach out to, like I said, always free to reach out to us offline. But other than that, Alex, thank you so much for being here, for providing your expertise and your story and helping everybody think through what is often one of the harder challenges in this space, is trying to make the right decision with very expensive assets and how to plan it right for your business. So thanks again for being here and giving all that.
Actually, there was one question that came up on the Route Consultants website or
Yeah.
on the Facebook
On the
page.
page, yeah.
There was a contractor out there asking about tires, and
Okay.
so I didn't get a chance to respond to that there. So maybe she's taking a look at this or gets a chance to watch. So there's a lot of different tire choices out there. But understand there's one advantage of being a FedEx contractor. If you go to the vendor page on MGB, okay, we have some tire discounts that are available to us. And Goodyear, there's Goodyear, there's Firestone, there's Michelin. You can get, really attractive discounts there. And then you can couple them with your relationships with a tire seller, somebody like a Southern Tire Mart. So if you go to somebody like that, you might be able to get like my drives are typically a lot cheaper than what you can get when you just show up at a tire store. So I negotiate or I use the Goodyear discount that I get through FedEx, and then my discount that I get through being a Southern Tire Mart customer, and I get really attractive pricing that way. And they'll do the mounting, they'll deal with the scrap. If I want to, I can do something called retreads. And so that's a little bit more technical, but what you do with your drive tires is they'll take off the top cap of the tread and they'll recap them. Then they use glue. Retreads have had historically some bad experiences, and those are usually like when you're driving down the highway, you see like this tire that's all like discombobulated and all broken up. That's usually a retread coming apart. But Southern Tire Mart and some of these really high-end tire dealerships do a really good job with their retreads. And what they'll do is they'll take your tires, your specific tires that you turned into them, and they'll recap them for you so that you know that you're buying your tires back again when you decide to do the recap. So that's something to think about. So use the vendor website on FedEx, on MGB. That's what it's there for. They do a great job of getting us really good pricing. And then, look at, getting a relationship with Clark Power Services, Dickinson Fleet Services, Southern Tire Mart. There's a big one up north. I'm not a northern contractor. I can't think of what it's like. They're big in Michigan and Ohio, but there's a big tire company up there to look at. But yeah, have relationships with there. You really shouldn't be paying more than $500 per tire. So if you are, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and that's a great call because tires aren't cheap. It's not a huge amount, but I have seen people really overpay for them. Often because they're in a panic and having to replace them quickly, and don't have those relationships set up in advance. So that's I think you're really right that you can get beat up on tires if you don't have the right strategy there.
Yep, definitely. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Alex, for that last note and for everything you talked to today. And thanks everybody who's on. And we will see all of you all next week on another webinar. So see ya.